Hello, everybody. It's Matthew Brand. I'm joined today by Rose. Say hi, Rose.
Hi, everybody.
Anyway, today we're going to be talking about socialism, which I think is a cult. But are you? What do you know about socialism?
What do I know about socialism?
Mm-hmm.
That it's no, we have to stop recording.
Why?
Uh, Socialism. That it's mostly compared in today's terms to Bernie Sanders.
Well, yeah. He's
Yeah.
he's his according to him, his socialism is different than regular socialism. His is democratic socialism. So Bernie Sanders thinks that like the Nordic countries, Sweden, Switzerland, all those places over there, Luxembourg. He thinks they're democratic socialism because they have high taxes, but they like basically have a lot of welfare programs for their people, and they have free healthcare and a lot of different stuff for them, which technically is true. They do have high taxes and a lot of programs for them, but they also have a like really. I mean, they make a lot of money over there. Like their
Mm-hmm.
economy is one really booming. Two, they have a really high cost of living. It's like three times ours.
Right, because
Yeah,
everybody pays so much in taxes.
not just because they pay so much in taxes, just because like the amount that they make is just basically inflation. Their
Right.
money's like inflated through the roof. Uh, I mean, it's worth the same amount as the U.S. dollar, but everything over there costs more. So if I go like you know what I mean, like if I go and buy a candy bar over there, it's way more money than a candy bar is over here. If that makes any sense. Apartment over there is going to cost way more than an apartment here costs. If that makes any sense. So that's his democratic socialism, which really basically they did. Some of those countries did try to switch to like socialism, and it failed, and they had to switch back to capitalism. And as a matter of fact, they tax the poor more than they tax the rich over there because of how it just kind of 180. Then it doesn't really matter. So Bernie Sanders doesn't know what he's talking about. But socialism is basically a what is when the community decides what happens in a job and with welfare and stuff like that. So for example, let's say you go work at Walmart, right? Instead of your boss deciding how much you get paid, all the workers decide how much everybody gets paid.
Oh, so it's kind of like a union, but everybody is
You're
their
right,
own
right.
little
Yeah,
unions.
everybody's their own little union or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And then as far as welfare programs, same thing. We people choose to vote in welfare program. That's technically what it's supposed to be, but it never works that way because somebody has to choose who
Right,
gets
there
what.
always has to be a little bit of power that's
Yeah,
not
someone has
just
to
us.
who choose who gets what. So it doesn't matter, and that's how things devolve in the communist. Have you ever read Animal Farm?
Yes.
Yeah, so what you saw is like the farmer was in control of all the
Mm-hmm.
animals,
Right.
and they didn't really get much of a say, and they rebelled. But what happened was all the pigs in the story eventually became
Mm-hmm.
just like the humans, and then it just reverses because someone has to be in charge of, and whoever gets in charge. The problem is when you have socialism, the reason it devolves into communism is because socialism, you decide like there's a distribution of wealth. The problem is whoever's in charge always ends up deciding who gets what,
Yeah.
and then that gives them too much power, and then it becomes communist, where everybody's stuff is everybody else's stuff, and there's no real individual rights. The reason being is that, and that's why I think it's a cult, is because if you have let's say people aren't down with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you have a group of people, everybody's supposed to give $20. Like five people, they're all supposed to give $20, and then that equals up to 100, right? Okay, what happens when Georgie and Pete decide, I want to keep my $20? Then the other three people have to give a lot more,
Right.
and if they don't have it, then that screws up the whole system. So you have to make Georgie and Pete get in line by force,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what people don't like. And that's where the communism comes in because they have to get in line. For example, if you don't pay your taxes, you're going to prison.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's a little bit of socialism right there. But
It seems like the problem is that the rich people have the money to give and then the poor people don't. So everybody, like, socialism seems like a great option for somebody that has a low income because it helps them, but somebody who's in the, top, say, 10%, they're giving so much more and they're losing what they had before.
right, but it's not just that.
That's where it's equal.
I guess the issue is, for one, the people who support socialism usually haven't had a real job in their life anyway.
Yeah.
They've either worked somewhere like in politics, in special interest groups, or in civil rights or something. They've never, or they're in college. They haven't actually worked long enough to understand that people don't typically make the same amount of money as long as they work long enough. So, for example, someone who's a grocery bagger at Kroger's might be like, yeah, man, I want $15 an hour, right? But that's not a, I'm not saying it's not a job, but typically people don't stay at that job for the longest time in the world. It's not that they're so dumb. Everybody says, oh, yeah, that person who works at Starbucks works super hard and they need $15 an hour. And if you can't pay them $15 an hour, then you don't deserve to open a business. I'm like, yeah, but you're just saying that everybody who's not rich shouldn't have a business. So it's kind of a catch-22 with that. It's always floaty. So the problem with socialism is almost like they have an ideal of something, and no matter what varies the ideal, it's almost religious. They just excuse everything that doesn't fit that idea, or every contradicting opinion. They find a way to excuse it. Like a religious zealot would, or something like that. So the thing that results in the end is, one, you have to do it by force, because you can't have optional socialism, because there's just going to be too many lazy people. Not everybody's going to be lazy. Some people are going to do stuff because they enjoy it, but sometimes you wake up and you're like, I don't fucking feel like it. No, I don't want to. I don't want to do it. I don't feel like it. That shit happens. Two, you got these mofos who are just going to be invalids. I mean, you can't do anything about that. That's not even their fault. But you're going to have a couple people who are disabled, right, who can't work very hard, who can't do much, and those are the people now who fall through the wayside in our system anyway. Like, there are going to be some people who aren't adept to jobs that are available now, or the jobs that are good, like that pay well, aren't available in their area. They can't reach them. There are people who are probably like down the street. They take the bus, but the bus ends at a certain extent. For people who don't know, we're based in Metro Detroit, so the bus doesn't even go all the way through Metro Detroit. The bus system ends. There's no subways. There's no nothing. You can't walk anywhere. You have to take a car. So most jobs require a car to get to, and Uber takes so much out of your, it costs so much. Yeah. If you take an Uber to get somewhere, then you're not making any money at the end of the day. So a lot of people are like, oh, well, what about those people, right? We need socialism for those people. No, you need to make it so they can get a way to get to work. That'll be a lot cheaper.
Yeah, there's a lot of different options.
Yeah, and
jumping to socialism, let's do it.
Yeah, and then you could and all you have to do is really just get an understanding with people. Like, if that whole community was like, hey, if you took a certain amount of money from all those people who can't get to work, they'd rather probably pay a one-time fee, that was the cost of their drive to work for one day in an Uber, and pay a one-time fee and get a system that works, instead of having to come out of pocket over and over and over again, right, to go all the way. They could do that, really easily. That's what Uber was in the first place. It was people paying $20. The difference is now there's not just a route, right? There's not a route that goes to Ann Arbor. There's not a route that goes to New Hudson and South Lyon and Novi and all those different places. If you're here in Detroit, you're stuck in Farmington and Livonia. Like, this is as far as you're going, and the Ubers, they're individuals, so people aren't sharing the cost of the ride, so it becomes very expensive. That being said, I just, what I get is, when I see people arguing for socialism, and what drives me fucking crazy, is they always come up with this weird, out of the way, like, oh, socialism's just never been tried before. That's what they'll always say. Socialism has never been tried before, and they, and then they'll be like, and then someone will bring up a time when socialism was tried, and they'll be like, oh no, no, that didn't really count.
Oh boy.
I mean, have you ever listened to a socialism debate?
Yeah, a few times. And
Yeah.
it's just super outlandish all the time. And it's like they throw all these ridiculous claims out. Well, and I don't know, I just think in general, like one of the huge problems with socialism is that we're a very idealistic capital. Like everybody has money, and that's like how our system runs in America. So, like, for us to go from, I think it's like 9.65 minimum wage to jump to $15, everything would skyrocket in price, and then we have the same issue. So if we don't fix those issues before we just make everybody pay $15 an hour for a basic job, then we have the same issues no matter what.
Yeah, I understand that. And the argument is that, like, oh well, the minimum wage hasn't been keeping up with inflation, but because it can't, because no matter every time you raise minimum wage, the inflation goes up. But inflation goes up in general,
Right.
because of government bills and all this kind of stuff. But a lot of the solution is to just make things more efficient, and lower the needs that people have. Like, you really don't you don't need internet most of the time. You don't need a TV, a big screen, a huge house, or whatever. But the problem is, some people who don't have much see somebody who has all that, and they get mad or jealous or pissy or whatever. But the point is, your money, as long as you're working a full-time job, is going to go somewhere.
Right.
The issue is, a lot of people don't have a foundation at home to build on before the money goes somewhere. So let's say someone whose parents helped them out with a car, a roof over their head, and just basic necessities, food and whatever, while that other person saves up money, is going to be so much well off to a person whose parents make them get a car payment when they're really really young, or someone who's made to get an apartment as soon as they hit 18. Oh, yeah, there was that saying, I think it was on Black Jeopardy. It was like, you know your parents think your daughter thinks she grown, or 18, and she thinks she grown, or something like that. And then the one guy, it was like, oh, it was the guy who plays Black Panther. He was pretending to be Black Panther, and he's just like, oh, you send her to a college and get her a good education so she can become a contributing member of society and invent new technology that will help all people. And they were like, well, the correct answer was kicking them out the house, but we'll take that too. And it's just like, you kick people, you make people compete and take care of themselves at an age where they're just not financially viable to do that yet. It really creates a detriment to their life later on. And if you have a parent who's a single parent, or they don't make much money themselves, or they're not doing very well, a lot of the times you're forced to help them out as soon as you turn 18 anyway. So there's like, you have your parents asking the kid for money before they're really a viable adult. I mean, shit, they're not even allowed to smoke at 28, at 18 really anymore. I mean, they're passing laws to stop that, but most of the places have already stopped selling cigarettes to 18-year-olds. You can't drink, you can't get a lot of hotel rooms, you can't rent a car, I mean, there's so much you can't do at 18, and yet, they try to make it so that you're super responsible at the same time. You can't do that. And then a lot of these people, they go to school and collect a mass amount of debt before they even get to work, work full time and can take care of themselves. So by the time they actually do get out of school, whether they're in their career or making good money or not, they already owe like several $100,000, or at least like 50 after interest. It's a bad. The problem is not really that people aren't getting paid enough early on, like at minimum wage. The problem is their foundation when they are getting paid minimum wage is crappy, and they're doing too much fighting to get by before they hit a certain point. That's why when you see those other cultures like Asians, some Hispanic cultures and stuff like that, they let the people stay at the house for a really long time, and they end up doing a lot better. Where I think a lot of old school like Americans and black people or whatever who've been in America, we lived in America for generations. It was that common to keep your kid in the house after 18.
Yeah.
But because when people come over, the market and something, it's like an immune system. It adapts to what everybody's doing. So people, let's say for example, a lot of people are started, what they call that thing, the living in sin. What do they call it when you just like live together? They call it like I can't remember the name of it, but when you have a couple living together,
Mm-hmm.
that they're not married or whatever, what happens is you get these two people, they're both paying the bills, and then the market adjusts for that. So now it expects two people to pay the bills. So
Mm-hmm.
the person who has one person paying the bill, they can't afford it. When you have a lot of families who like all the families are living in the same household, um, uh, the market adjusts for that,
Mm-hmm.
and then it expects you to not really pay for bills until you've been saving up for like 4 to 10 years. And really, that's the real thing that needs to be hammered into kids is like stay at home, work, save up your money for 4 years, and you're probably going to be just fine as long as you're not really stupid and blow it all, right? Like
Right.
when you save it up till you're responsible and know what to do with it, and take the steps of moving out and being responsible, being on your own. Take that part slow. We need to create a culture of that because otherwise, that's why so many people are just getting left by the wayside. I mean, with the exception of them just being hooked on meth or heroin or something like that, which I mean still sad. But anyway, thanks for tuning in. This was Matthew Brand and Rose. All right, and we'll check you next time.